Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. It's time to once again have a look at the sales, and we're bundling a bunch of nations together just because of the fact that there just isn't enough vehicles in them to justify their own video. So, in this video we're having a look at Sweden, Israel, China, and Italy. There'll be timestamps for everything, so whatever you want to have a look at, you can do that. This is the Swedish vehicle that's on offer for ground. It's the CV90-105XC8, I believe it's its full name. Basically, this is a auto-loaded CV90, and with a 105mm, the L50. It's a 10.0, which might be a little bit worrying for people, but that's because it has the M33. It also has Gen 2/3 thermals, which are incredibly good in the Gunner and Commander. It also has the LWS and even an ATGM if you really feel like using it. The other part as well is the Scout UAV and also just the mobility of this thing. The transmission means that it can fly forwards and backwards, which is very, very good. Now, the vehicle does have not a ton of survivability in it. It's quite easy to deal with it, apart from this upper glacis, which can ricochet stuff, but mostly this thing won't survive an encounter. What you're looking for in this is to be hyper-aggressive, get a very, very good start to the game, using the gun and using the thermals to get scouts off and take apart the map and then take it apart. And with the 5-second reload and the 10 degrees of gun depression, you can do that on every single map. 10.0 is also a very, very strong BR for Sweden right now, and this just kind of adds to it. You really should think about picking this one up if you do like Sweden, and it will just fit so well in all of the lineups that are around. A fantastic vehicle to play. The J35XS is the best Draken in the game, and that sucks because it's a premium. Hopefully at some point we get a fun Draken which is a tech tree vehicle. We have the A and the D. Both of those don't have countermeasures, which is a huge issue. The J35XS at 10.7 only gets 12 countermeasures, but as somebody who's played a lot of the MiG-23M, 12 countermeasures is enough. You can make it work, especially since they're large caliber, and also because this thing is super maneuverable. So you can use it quite effectively in that way. So don't be afraid of the fact that it doesn't have a lot. Just learn how to use them properly. The crazy thing about the J35XS is it has 6 AIM-9Js. And now, I'm not a huge fan of AIM-9Js. I'm not one of those people who actually enjoys the missile. I definitely prefer the other American missiles, the Gs, the Ds, and the Hs. But the Js are still good. You know, they have good burn, they have good overload. They're overall pretty decent missiles, and the fact that you get 6 of them is nuts. A lot of people actually bring rockets along with the Js if they can, and the reason to do that is to hit a base and then go after people with the crazy armament that this thing has. It also has the 30mm can. It only does have one of them, but you'll be mainly using your missiles to be able to deal with people. You don't really have access to an RWR, so if you're getting locked on, you won't really know, but since this is more of a dogfighting vehicle, you don't have to worry about that too much. Then it also has the Flig motor, the Svenska RM6C, which has enough for us to push you around the place. This thing did slightly get nerfed recently, but it's still completely fine at the playstyle that you play it with, and also at the same time, they actually did also give it a buff, where now you can actually see the shells from the 30mm. I would say this is a fantastic pickup. It's a super fun vehicle, and you stay away from a lot of the monsters that are at high BRs, which is just a huge plus. If you run into stuff like F-14s, though, good luck, but that's pretty much everybody right now. The Kfir Canard is the offering for Israel. It's 10.7 in air and 10.3 in ground. Basically, this is a bomb truck, and I know that sucks because this vehicle could easily be so much more, right? It has defers, which are fantastic. It has the countermeasures to keep itself alive, and also it gets access to some sidewinders in the form of AIM-9Gs. But it's at 10.7, and 2 AIM-9Gs is a very, very small amount of rounds or missiles. Like, if you compare this to what we have on the J35XS, which is the same BR, that thing has 6 AIM-9Js, right? Which is just crazy. So this vehicle will do well because of the fact it has a very, very good engine. This engine is incredibly powerful for the airframe. It means that you can get bombs off, you can get rockets off on bases, and then attack afterwards and do really well, especially with the Delta Wing design. But a lot of people struggle with this thing in that second phase, where instead of hitting the bases or, doing something like that, you then actually have to dogfight. This vehicle is very good at dogfighting, but it relies on its guns, and it doesn't have a lot of missiles. So setting those up can be a bit of a problem. But it can be done. It does have an RWR, so you can tell where things are coming from. The guns are fine, they do well, but it's just a bit harder to use if you are not used to this style of jet. So if you are a person who hasn't played a Mirage or a Mirage 5 or 3 specifically, just be careful with this one. You still can do very well, but it's one of those where you have to be very patient with the armament since there's not a lot of it. The ZTZ 96AP is very similar to the standard 96A that's in the tech tree. The only real difference is that this vehicle gets access to the electro-optical active protection system, which is right here. You never really use it. It does have a dazzler as well, I think, on both of them. So in night battles, if you ever see them, which you shouldn't, it is one of those which you'll be able to see from miles away. But I don't think you can even see night battles of this BR, so never mind. The ZTZ96 is a good platform. If you like stuff like the T72 or T80, you'll like this one. It uses the FY4 ERA, which does give you some kinetic protection. But the biggest issue with the ZTZ is this huge low glacis, and also the same thing as all of these. You just shoot for the breach and hope for the best. It does have a really nice round, though. The Type 1985-1, which pens a lot for 10.0, and then also the thermals, I believe, are Gen 2 on this thing, unless they got changed, which is really nice. The laser rangefinder also helps you out quite a lot, and if you have standard experience with the ZTZ96s in the tech tree, you know exactly how this one plays. You have a lot of forward momentum, you don't have a lot of reverse, and that basically means that you can get into dodge very quickly and play pretty aggressively, but once you're in there, you can't get out, and that can be a real problem. It does have smoke grenades, which is nice, even though it's a prototype, and also it will, do all of the things that you need it to do well. I think the Western MBTs at the moment are probably a bit stronger. The ones at 10.3, which you'll face quite a lot in this thing, since this one has a slightly better targeting speed than the T72, but it's nothing too different, and you'll still struggle in that regard to get the gun on target all the time. So for me, I like this one. I've done very well in the ZTZ 96s, but it's not going to be as easy to play as the other vehicles around. The A5C, or as I like to call it, basically just the magic launcher, because that's all it is a pretty upgraded Q5. The Q5 is one of those which has always struggled when it comes to its armament, and also countermeasures half the time, but the A5C fixes both of these. It has 18 countermeasures, which once again, may not seem like a lot. It's definitely enough for 10.0, especially now how sensitive a lot of the missiles are to flares, and also it gets 2 magic wands. The magic wands are easily the best missile of this BR. They are way better than stuff like the AIM-9L and the R60M, and I know that is something which is probably a little bit more, I suppose, controversial, but I will stand by it. When you look at the platform of the A5 and the speed of it and how it's able to get around the place, I would well take this with its 2 magic wands over something like the A10 with the AIM-9Ls. This vehicle has basically access to 2 boomsticks that can kill so many different things, and you will face so many vehicles that do not have access to countermeasures. So therefore, they cannot defend themselves, and you will just take them apart. And that is the craziness of the A5C. A lot of the time, though, if you aren't able to use your magics, you are in fact just a Q5. And being just a Q5, you have horrible 23mm, which are some of the worst guns at this BR, if not the worst, and you don't have a ton of maneuverability, just a lot of speed, so you'll be able to get back to base, get more of those magics, and then go from there. It does technically have some bomb loads you can bring, but they're not very good. They really are not really enough to make a huge difference on the battle, so I wouldn't really worry about them too much. I know a lot of people, once again, hit the base and then go after targets with the magics. What I would actually say is better to actually just set up to go after the targets. You do have an RWR, which is pretty decent, but but no radar on the vehicle, which can be limiting depending on your playstyle. The J7D is an interesting one. It has quite a lot of countermeasures on the vehicle inbuilt in it at 10.3 in ground, but remember this thing is at 11.0 in air, which is probably the main place where you'll be playing this. But it does have a decent chunk of countermeasures, which is quite nice. The other part of this vehicle, which is a little bit odd, is it has the Shenyang Liming WP13FI. Now, this one doesn't have as much power as other vehicles that you'll see about the place, but the reason why this thing is so high is because it gets access to PL7s. Now, PL7s are magic wands, basically, and you also get the PL5Bs, so depending on what type of playstyle you want, you can go for either, but I'm pretty sure nowadays, if we compare them, the PL7s are just better in every way, so it might just be worth taking them out. But as somebody who's been playing the MiG-21 BIS recently, which is basically what this thing is, with slightly different armament, it does have the JL7A, which is once again very similar to the BIS's radar. It does have an RWR, which is kind of similar to it too, and also the 23s. The biggest problem with this is it relies on short-range engagements. And a lot of vehicles right now, around 11.0, it's very hard to find those short-range engagements. If you can find them, if you play a lot of 10.7, a lot of 10.3, you'll do really well in this thing with its missiles, because its missiles are very powerful. But trying to get them there is very hard, and something that will not be something that you'll see a lot. My experience in the MiG-21 BIS was half the time I was able to do the whole, kind of dogfighty boom and zoom thing that you do with it, which is how you'd play this thing, but the other half of the time I just got creamed by semi-active or active radar homing missiles, which will be what this runs into. So out of the J7D and the A5, I think the A5 is a lot easier to play, and generally you won't face as crazy competition, whereas in this thing at 11.0, you are going to struggle against half of the competition you play as, so it's more boom and bust. And for me, I don't really like boom and busts. I'm not a huge fan of it at all. For Italy, you have the F104S TAF. This is, of course, the Turkish F104, and also the reason why the standard F104S has countermeasures, which is quite nice. So this is a heavily upgraded F104, which means it gets a ton of weapons, but they're just janky, I think is probably the best way of putting it. The vehicle's at 11.0, and at 11.0, it gets 2 AIM-7Es, and also AIM-9Ps. So it has some of the worst IRs that you will find at this BR. Compare this to the J7D we looked at earlier, which has the PL7s and the PL5Bs, and look at what this thing gets, right? Then if you have a look at the MiG-21 BIS, it gets R60Ms, this only gets AIM-9Ps. So the difference between what this gets in terms of air-to-air armament and others is very rough. The issue I have with the F104Ss as they go up is they are still very fast vehicles. You can get chased down, though, which is the big issue, but you want those longer range missiles to be able to engage from further away, so you can use your speed to get in, bang, get out again. But the problem with them is the AIM-9Ps and Js are a lot more short range, and therefore you can't do that as effectively compared to other vehicles, and that sucks. The radar itself is not very good, so using the AIM-7Es, you can do it, it is possible, but once again, requires setup, and at 11.0, you'll face a lot of monsters that are way better at you at that, which is a bit sucky. So yeah, the main advantages of this thing are amount of missiles, but the missiles aren't very good, and also you do get a decent amount of bombs and rockets, but once again, why are you playing an F104 if you're just going to use it to bomb things? It's just not going to work very well. So it's in a very rough position right now. You could probably get some decent grinding out of it, especially if you catch a lot of people off guard with it. But the problem is, it just isn't in the greatest position right now. So a bit of a tough one. Then again, Italy doesn't really have any good premiums right now for their high tiers from an air-to-air point of view. So maybe this is the only option. As always, though, hope you have a wonderful day. I'll see you next time.
I'd just like to thank GMG Smiley, CD Beans, Chieftain Mike, EMN3 Galaxy, Tulio Pontecorvo, Brendan Quinn, Carrion Crow, Gus Irenicus, Pyman, Wartinder, Teddy, Daniel Stanton, Martinez, B. Young, Ozzy Panzer, Alan Hacker, Liam Shear, Opium Prime, Lafouche, Sem Aslan, Uncle Bean, and Derek R. for supporting the channel.